Evening, everyone. My name is Montze COF. I chose a topic that has been widely debated over the past few decades and affects everyone in America. Gun control in the U.S. has become extremely polarizing because there seems to be a very thin line between gun control and gun criminalization. But the issue is more complicated than banning guns altogether. While the U.S. struggles to find an answer for gun violence, one thing is clear. Current gun control laws in the U.S. are inadequate at protecting the lives of the American public. For starters, it is way too simple for an American to get their hands on a gun. Even with current gun control policies, those who should not be handed firearms are still able to obtain them. According to Sean Philpott Jonasson, a political reporter for the Wiley Library, databases like the NICS, which is the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, rely on states to submit mental health records. Unfortunately, many states do not do so reliably. An audit by the U.S. Department of Justice found that New Jersey and Pennsylvania uploaded more than 1 million mental health records into the NICS system in 2015. But in the same year, Alaska, Montana, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wyoming uploaded fewer than 110. In other words, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System depends on each state to submit mental health records, but many states fail to do so, meaning the mental health of those wanting to purchase guns is often overlooked. Consequently, Jonas also reported Shin Ho Cho, who killed 32 people and wounded 17 others during the 2017 mass shooting of Virginia Tech University, should have been stopped from buying guns he used in the attack, but Virginia had failed to submit his mental health record to the FBI. Although mental illness is not a direct causation of gun violence, according to the American Psychiatric Association, many risk factors for violence, including substance abuse, trauma, and poverty, are also risk factors for mental illness. So, while we must not stigmatize those with mental illness, there is a correlation between poor mental health and acts of violence. Without substantial mental health reports, gun ownership is granted to those who suffer and are more likely to share risk factors associated with violence. Secondly, current gun control affects minority groups different than it does whites. While white Americans are still capable of falling victim to the poor gun control laws, minority groups are even more subjected to the inadequacies of these said laws. According to Michael Siegel, Molly Fan, and Anita Nopov, researchers of community health sciences at Boston University, CDC's data shows that within our nation's cities, Black Americans are on average 8 times more likely to be killed by firearms by those who are white. Why must someone's safety depend on the color of the skin? In lower income communities, the threat of gun violence affects individuals more than it would in communities where whites are the majority. Systematic policies that harm minority groups are not exclusive to gun control, but still need to be addressed and resolved. In order to protect the life of all Americans, gun control needs to protect all Americans equally, but our report fails to do so. Furthermore, the actual life expectancy of young Black Americans has decreased because of gun violence. According to Alexa Cohen of the Boston Herald, Black Americans lost 4.14 years of average life expectancy due to gun violence, both homicide and suicide, while white Americans lost 2.23 years to those causes of death, researchers found, according to a study posted by BMJ. This statistic shows that even with our current gun control laws, minorities are more likely to become victims of gun violence and have their lives cut short. My final point addresses the mass shooting epidemic in America, where campuses and concerts used to be places of education and enjoyment are now hotbeds for sadistic active shooters feeding for blood. In America, gun ownership is a prized right, but at what cost? According to Frederick Lemieux, a reporter for Scientific American, the higher gun ownership rate, the more a country is susceptible to experiencing mass shooting incidents. This association remains high even when the number of incidents from the United States is withdrawn from the analysis. This shows that the more guns owned in a country, the more mass shootings we will fall victim to. Current gun laws are not stopping mass shootings from occurring and fail to protect the lives of innocent Americans. Concert goers, students, festival attendees, or those simply going to work trying to make an honest dollar should not have to risk their lives to enjoy a show, receive an education, celebrate their identities, or make an honest dollar. Sadly, no less than a week ago, another mass shooting took place in America. New York Times reports a former warehouse employee who had recently lost his job stormed through his old workplace in suburban Chicago on Friday, killing 5 workers and injuring 5 police officers. Enough is enough. How many more names need to be read and forgotten, turned into hashtags, or chiseled into the grave before the U.S. acknowledges the fact that current gun control laws are not enough? Thank you.
All right, well, the proposition's clearly identified, so we're in good shape there. There's not really a preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, although in the body of the speech you do have labels on some of the secondary points. I do think that they need to be phrased a little bit more as claims. Sometimes they just indicate a subject area that you're going to be talking about, and we have to figure out what the claim is, and you want to be more consistent on that. Like I said, it's pretty well organized once you get started. You explain concepts as you go along reasonably well. It sounded like you had a good grasp of what it was that you were talking about. There were a couple of statistics that I thought might be a little bit iffy, but we'd have to look at your sources and see what's going on there, because some of it seems to contradict some of the information that I've encountered before, but that's neither here nor there. If your evidence is accurate as you've quoted it, that's what we're looking at. There'll be conflict over that from the refutation speaker. You've got good examples that you're using for incidents about some information, although I'm looking at this like the mental health reports and submitting those sorts of things, and I'm thinking, well, if Pennsylvania and New Jersey, I'd have to think about what the population of those states is. If they're submitting 1 million people each year, that sounds like a good chunk of their population has mental issues, and that seems, I don't know that that's not high, but it sounds like it would make an additional burden in identifying, well, which of those people is problematic, which ones do we have to worry about. Whereas, again, I don't know because I haven't looked at the data. Those states that you mentioned, the half dozen states that you mentioned that are submitting less than 110, are they submitting 110 that are problematic, or are they submitting everybody who's had a mental issue? The comparison there, I think, is an interesting one, but I'm not sure that we're comparing the same sorts of things. And so it's one of those things where follow-up information would probably be advisable. If we were having a debate on this issue, I'm sure that we'd get further discussion of that particular point. There is some good statistical information that you use to suggest a link between the amount of guns and the amount of violence, or, for instance, mass shootings. There's some information. There's some information on deaths by guns that are related to ethnic classifications, and I think that's potentially interesting, although I'm not exactly sure what the causality is on that. That seems to be largely assumed to be related to the guns, and I think there may be other causes that you're going to be dealing with there. It's nicely delivered for the most part, so thank you.